All are welcome. Welcome, welcome. All are welcome. Greetings from Wednesday, May 4th, 2016, the midnight hour. This one here, as said before, me and C are going to start talking about the time we saw a shadow man in my brother-in-law's house. We'll just start with a little quick rundown of the actual event. Basically, we were going to their house. Her mom stayed with him. We were going to their house for a visit. We had just arrived. We were approaching the house without any particular concern, and then...
Well, as he just said, we were indeed coming to see my mother and my brother for a visit, and we had just arrived. Everything seemed very normal. We started to ascend, I believe it's 3 steps to the porch, and we were holding hands as we were walking up the steps. I can clearly remember when my eyes looked in the window, because there's a very large window that almost goes to the ground, to the edge of the bottom of the porch, So it's a very large window. And I see a figure in the window, a silhouette. And I immediately assume that this is my brother, who is a tall, rather lean fellow himself. But it appeared that the figure was looking out of the blinds, like looking out the window at us. Well, if anybody would have heard us pull up, heard us coming up this porch. It's not a very large porch. You would, of course, hear it. And I immediately went over to the door and, started banging on the door. And when he did not open it, I started getting rather frustrated and, kind of cursing at him a little bit to hurry up. Why are you keeping me lingering on the porch like a stranger? What's going on? What are you up to? So I figured, okay, he's just up to something. I caught him at an inappropriate moment for one reason or another, and he's, has me waiting out here like this. So I go back to the window. The figure is gone.
Yeah, the figure peeked out the window at us and then darted away. And of course, as she said, we assumed that this was her brother.
Yes. So, at this moment, this is my brother, I'm thinking. So I start going around to the windows and I start, really getting upset now because I was expected. What is going on? What are you up to that you're so afraid you won't just let me in? Well, right as we're beginning to really get fired up about this, lo and behold, a car pulls up, my mother's car, and my mother and my brother get out of the car. Well, that shocks me into realizing
that someone has just broken
someone's
into your
in the house.
Someone must have broken in.
Of course, so I immediately report to my brother. There's somebody in the house. I saw him.
You seemed a little concerned at first.
He picked up the pace just a tad, and we go immediately into the door and arm ourselves. I should probably just footnote here, he collected guns, and we had an extensive collection when we moved. In any case, we arm ourselves. I start, looking around because I'm worried, is there a gun laying out that this criminal or whoever's in our house is going to, open fire on us any second? And we start going room to room, closet to closet, like SWAT team style, if you will, or, just like they show in shows, to try to check everything and make sure you checked under everything and in every closet. And I'm becoming more upset as this is going on because I know what I saw. And I started to realize after the fact how tall that figure was. And the really strange thing is that I saw legs all the way down to the bottom of the window.
Well, I mean, I should say here that obviously we looked all around the house and there was no one in there, and their concern went away really fast. Had somebody broken in, obviously they couldn't have gone out the back door because something else had happened with the back door, and until they could replace it, it had been just boarded over with a solid piece of plywood. So this person and a bar across, and this person who broke in, they couldn't have gone out the back. They didn't go out the back windows. These windows were old and painted over.
Yes, I mean, to my satisfaction, there was no one in the house, and I'm rather not easy to satisfy at that point. I should say, growing up in the country, we experienced things with incidents with theft and things like that. So we were not afraid to investigate and see if someone is messing with your stuff. And living in a city, it's even more likely that an actual criminal may have broken into the house, doing God knows what. I should agree that what really struck me when I forced the issue that we both saw at the exact same moment.
They said there was someone in your house.
Exactly.
There's reason to be concerned, and their concern was going down and not really showing at all as we're still kind of wandering around the house, expecting there to be someone.
Very uneasy.
Because there's nowhere for him to have gone. He didn't come out the front door. He didn't go out the garage and the back. As I said, the windows and the door situation, it wasn't happening. But really, I guess it was a little while, your mom maybe got sort of tired of it, and it kind of came up. You go ahead.
Yes, that's what I was kind of getting around to. I confronted them. I said, we both saw it. I know what we saw. There's a man in this house. There was somebody in this house moments before y'all pulled up. And my mother and brother said, we see him all the time. Well, that was like somebody punched me in the stomach. What do you mean you see him all the time? You see what all the time?
And what they were implying is that they see this shadowy figure
all the time.
A lot. They see him a lot.
That it didn't because I noticed like during this frantic search, that I'm getting more upset. My brother's getting calmer and calmer.
Yeah, it's almost like
unwinding.
You just mean it's the shadow man. Well, there's nothing to be concerned about.
Well, full disclosure here, I have to say I had a lot of experience with the paranormal in my childhood. I was raised in a pagan household, and which we can go into that more later. Just suffice to say, to me, even in my training, everything I knew, this is a bad sign. A figure that does not show itself is a bad sign. What are we dealing with here? What's happening?
And it's funny because, at the time that this happened, there was no mystery. We knew exactly what to call it. There had already been a great deal of business out there about the shadowmen. So, once it became obvious, we started testing this, looking at the window itself. Okay, so we're having to say, well, there's no person in here, apparently. So what were we seeing? We saw a skinny figure it was on the other side of the window through the closed blinds, and there's light on in the living room. And you see this, a perfectly outlined figure, not distorted, not a pale shadow, a black dark shadow,
like cut out of felt or something, like a stage setting, silhouette, something.
And also, it should be considered that by the look of the silhouette, there was no clothes on this person, there was no hair on this person, there was no features on this person. And then when I really started thinking about it, it would have had to have been standing on the couch.
Through the couch.
On the couch. It would have had to have been standing on the couch in order to be in the position that it was. Because it really sort of crouched down to peek through the blind. So if this had been a person, which it couldn't have been because we tested the shadows with the lighting in the room, you could not, a human being, make that shadow through that window. We tried over and over again.
We even had my brother stand in the window just to test to see what it looked like, and it didn't come close. It was much thinner than even my very lean silhouetted brother.
All you could get was a very pale, distorted shadow that
it was clearly a shadow
that you could barely tell was a person. I mean, if they held their head right, you could see that. Oh, this must be the neck and shoulders. But this was a perfectly outlined silhouette. That's the real thing that really kicked it off. Is, oh wait, now that I'm having to think about it, that shadow was impossible.
The legs went all the way through the couch.
If he'd been a real person, it would have been going right through
because the couch is pushed up completely against the window. Well, I'm sure lots of people do that. They push their couch right up to the wall or window. Well, this was that wall that had the window, and we pushed it right up against it. You could see the entire back of the couch, and that's something I realized as I stood back, and I said, hold on, wait a minute. What's going on here? Because the couch is in the way, and that couch was not moved.
Yeah, and it should also be said that by the motion of the shadow, it looked like as though a person had just casually had walked up to the window or had been standing in the window
standing there.
And then it was like it heard us, leaned down and looked through the window, and also it darted off to the side and down. Almost, if it had been a person, they would have had to have done a Superman leap and landed on the ground.
Yes, I was going to mention that.
Weird. I didn't think about it at the time because you have no cue that there's anything special about it. But yeah, when you have to go back and start looking at what's really going on, because there was nobody in here, no signs, nobody's broken in or anything like that. And then, of course, you're already getting this into your head now. It's starting to sink in. And the very people you've just been trying to warn are saying, oh, yeah, we see him all the time.
Yes, I have to tell you, even now as I'm remembering, my heart is just really pounding because this is just, it's a tremendous thing because I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't have seen it. And then I have a witness to it, that I didn't imagine it. And I was not, by the way, I will just throw out there, I was not drinking or on drugs or anything like that. Nothing of the sort. This was not a hallucination or anything like that. I certainly wasn't walking beside him asleep.
Yeah, as I mentioned before in that opener video, I gave my little short, strange, whatever you want to say, sleep paralysis shadowman story. This story is one of the only reasons I bring that other one up. I would have been content to say dream, but this was not. This was fully conscious, fully awake, so common and normal you don't question it till you realize it was impossible.
So, astonishingly, the willingness that they had to let this go was really bugging me. Now, I could expect this of my brother, as he, was not affiliated with any particular spiritual belief or religious group to his peril. And my mother, though, should have known better. And I directly confronted her that everything she had ever told me, this was a really bad sign. Shadowy figures or, any malevolent presence is not good. So when I confronted her about this, she then further said to me, I have so much protection on this house, nothing can happen. Yeah, it's laughable because I'll just come out with this part right now. A month later, they're dead. And it happened overnight, Well,
that's really, we're going to get deeper into that because them both moving into that house had to, I would dare say there was already something going on with them. There was already things sort of following them around. But that house was bad all by itself. It wasn't nothing spectacular. It's not gothic or anything like that. It's just a regular ranch house in a regular neighborhood. And yet, let me just say, I didn't think about it much at the time. Even that's funny how I said before, is like you think about paranormal things and then you totally dismiss things that are happening right in front of you. But it was always dark in that house. I don't care if all the windows were open, if all the blinds were up, if every light was on, it always felt dark. I felt like it was hard to see in that house. And there's actually quite a few things we're going to go into just anecdotally as we go along. But yeah, there's plenty to be noticed in that place, and some of the other details about previous weirdness that they had already seen in the house. So go back to you.
Yes, there was many things uh, prior to and especially after this, up until their death, that things really began to escalate. There was much more tension in the house, the bickering. My mother, who was already terminally ill with cirrhosis of the liver, which I'm sure there's people out there that have seen how hepatitis C goes for people, and it's very, very hard on not only the person experiencing it, but the caregiver and people around. And, the really sad thing is that the things my mother was into may have been a door open for a lot of this to come through, because she did not know the grace of Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior, and that this paganism, in whatever package you want to call it, whether you want to take it in the New Age package or in one of the other labels, and there's nothing new about it. This is the old esoteric mystery religion. It's what it all leads back to, and it's not good. And, I don't think my mother would have ever willingly brought this upon our house. I think she already had issues, uh, you know, with stemming from her beliefs, or lack of belief, actually. But in any case, there were many more things that happened.
There were some things that I wasn't there for that you could tell us about, including the cats in that house. Which I mean, cats can be crazy and they can act, goofy all on their own. But these were the nuttiest batch of cats I've ever seen for chasing things that weren't there. I mean, I did see some of that, but I mean, no, cats might do that. People say they're chasing fairies or whatever, and that sounds cute. But these cats were out of their minds. They damn near run into a wall chasing whatever they were chasing. But there were some other things that I wasn't there for. One of them got himself somehow locked up in a cabinet.
Yes, that was a very unpleasant weekend I spent when my mother went back to Kentucky to finalize a divorce, and my brother went with her. And should say that I was plenty old enough to stay home alone, and I'd done it many times before in a spooky house in the middle of the country. So this little suburban house didn't scare me. So I decided to just make the best of it. They were going to be gone, and I was just going to, have a good time and I wasn't planning to have a party or nothing like that. Just, use the house and have it to myself. As he said before, the house did always seem very dark. I opened all the windows, all the blinds. I tried to keep it, uh, as bright as possible, and I believed in the benefits of natural sunlight, and uh, it seemed dark always. We had a problem with light bulbs that would blow out just all at once, seemingly way too soon. But okay, so they go, and I immediately feel very, very uneasy in the house. I end up hearing constant whispering, and just whispering just out of my range of hearing, but enough that I keep hearing it. And I keep thinking, a TV's on, something's on, somebody left something on. So I track around, make sure every single stereo's turned off and everything's turned off, satisfy myself that everything's turned off. Well, that would get progressively worse like it was in the next room. And when I would go to the room to try to, see what's going on, nothing would be there. All of the cats were freaked out all the time. They really would literally run into a wall, try to chase things all the way up the wall. And I wouldn't see whatever it was they were seeing. And I know that, like you said, cats will chase things sometimes, but this just did seem unusual. I've had cats my whole life, and
they were stressed. These cats seems very stressed to me.
Back to the weekend.
And it should be said that they're in a house full of cat-loving people. They were, so it wasn't coming from the people.
Yes, they were pampered. My mother pampered her cats. There's no doubt about that. Okay, well, things kind of get a little worse for me over the weekend. And there comes an incident where I'm sure I hear something coming from the garage. Well, again, I do the go out there. And the garage was attached to the kitchen. You just, door right into it. You go into the garage. We didn't park any cars in the garage. We used it for boxes and storage, And the way I can recall is that I heard rather suddenly, after again, when I, convinced myself that nothing's going on, muffled music and or talking. Sounds like one or the other. Well, when I opened this big cabinet that's built into the wall, there's a radio in there. And it was an old radio. And it was on. Now, I have no idea how it could have been, who or why anybody would have put it there. But the really creepy part was when there's no batteries in it. Because I looked. And when I looked and there wasn't any batteries in it, I remember just dropping it. And it scared me very, very much. And I was ready to cry. I mean, I admit I was an adult and I was ready to cry. I didn't know what to do. I mean, what am I going to do? Call my mom and tell her what? Tell her what?
Yeah, the radio with no batteries is...
I know. If it hadn't happened to me, I would have said, surely not. She must be mistaken. But I swear it was in there.
And that radio, we never really got to ask, but we weren't even sure if that was actually even belonged to her, your brother or your mother.
I don't
things
think
happened
it
quickly
did.
after that, and of course we weren't asking these questions until after. But yeah, there was some question as to whether or not that was even his, or it was just something that had been left in the house, because there were other things that had been left in that house. There was just really quick to the weirdness of the past of the house, or potential weirdness. There was apparently there was a doctor who had lived there, is what it seemed, based on some of the mail that would come and something that was said by a realtor at one point, and an elderly mother.
Yes,
that much seems clear. But what's weird, really, that we connect to that, can't really prove it, but is that the crawl space under the house, through one of the bedrooms in one of the closets, there's a little trap door in the bottom, and you go down to the crawl space if you need to do plumbing or something like that. But down in that space was what? The really antiquated...
Yeah, I was hesitant to mention that.
Well, it definitely seems weird.
It was strange to me, that's for sure. What we found was, just long and short of it, were these syringes that appeared to not be from any time I know of, since plastic has been used for syringes, which, as far as I know, is as long as I've been
Yeah, I remember
ever going to a hospital. You know, it was plastic.
I remember everybody in the
used.
house talking about that, and they were glass.
They
and
were
steel.
glass
And steel syringes, and there was apparently a pile of them.
It was
dumped down in there.
A few. I don't know. I know that there was a few, and I could not tell you if there were more. I did not go digging down there. The whole thing, even if I hadn't have known that, and I'm not claustrophobic, by the way. I'm not particularly. You know, I didn't like going down there.
And I bring that up actually just because, I guess it's like coinage towards the weirdness of that place, because as I said, outside of the events that we saw, outside of some of the events that I wasn't there for, there was a general weirdness about that house. And I don't know, there was other people who maybe couldn't quite put a finger on it. You know, they just didn't like to be there, and I didn't like to be there. I couldn't stand being in that house. And here's one of the little weirdnesses is when I'd be there with her, I'd be there to visit her mom, and I would get this overwhelming urge to sit between her and the windows. And I mean, I'm not talking about a full hallucination here, but I'm talking about your mind is so distracted by a thought you cannot stop thinking about, even though it has nothing to do with what's going on around you. And in these thoughts, always, it was sort of symbolic of projectiles. I would think of spears, I would think of point arrows, I would think of bullets, cannonballs. It's weird, but this would go through my mind, and I would want to get between her and the windows, and that will actually maybe make some sense when we come to the sort of the ultimate end of that story. But I guess that we're gonna.
The truth also is that's a fact, because I can remember him being very distracted when I would try to speak to him. And I should mention, this was the first time I stopped living at home. I was living with him, and I was coming to visit my mother and take care of a lot of the household duties and make sure she was getting to her appointments if she needed, you know, help running errands or anything like that. You know, that was my job. And, you know, no matter how wrong my mother was about any of her beliefs, I fully think that, you know, you always love your mother no matter what, and I wanted to do right by her, and that's what I was trying to do. And you know, I would notice when we would talk, he would be very distracted. He couldn't hardly listen to anything I said, and it was never like that any other time except when we were there, and especially when I used to stay the night.
Now we're running up against our technical capabilities here, so I want to stop this